Hello everyone. Today is another episode of the podcast called Break the Walls, where we're talking about life and business and how to break the walls, obstacles, and problems in the life. And today with me is Markus Bernestrom, and we will talk mostly about life, about business, about investments, about new technology. And I'm really happy, Markus, that you're already here with me. I want to give you a word to make a nice introduction because there is lots to share. So please, the stage is yours.
All right, Taras. Thank you very much. Yes, this has been a long time in the making. Huh? I'm
Yeah.
very happy to be here finally. Thank you for inviting me. And well, I have to kind of start off with saying that I've been incredibly blessed in so many ways. I scored a jackpot already when I was born. I mean, I have a Swedish passport, which means I can travel almost anywhere in the world without any big problems. Maybe some visas, some places. Especially when I grew up, it was the number one passport in the world when it came to visa-free travels. And I've been pretty much indoctrinated by my parents into that lifestyle. And according to my mom, at least, I was made in a hotel room in Paris. She started having labor in a cave in Yugoslavia, and then I came out in Germany in Munich, and where they lived for a while. So already before I was born, I'd been to I think 9 countries or something like that, and it made it kind of difficult for me to adapt to being just normal and sitting still. I guess today we call it ADHD. Back then we used to call it personality type. But it's made it a little bit tricky for me to sit still. And geographically, in relationships, in jobs, whatever it's been, I've kind of been all over the place. And I'm so interested in basically everything. I'm not really interested in sports. I'll be honest with that one. You'll lose me very quickly if we have to start talking about sports except the UFC. But anything outside of sports, basically, I find interesting. And already as a kid, I started getting involved in things. I wanted to make my own money. Everyone kept telling me, it's like, oh, enjoy it. You're a kid. You don't have any responsibilities. You don't have, it's so great to be a kid. And I didn't like being a kid. So I was thinking, it's like, this is the highlight of my life. Like people telling me what to do, when to be places, not having any money. And I was like, this is the highlight. And I could just picture in front of me. It's like, oh, so first I'm going to go to school and, then I'm going to go to school again and again and again. And then I'll have some job and I'll sit in an office and, then you're 65 and you're like, what the fuck happened to my life? Part of my language. So that was kind of depressing to me. But had I known then what I know now, I would have been much less worried about that. Because already when I was a teenager, I started doing some travels by myself. To be able to do that, of course, I had to make money. So, whatever way works, we'll do a lot of this running around Christmas, selling gifts and magazines and things to like knocking on people's doors, right? And I remember all these winter months standing outside the commuter train station in the winter trying to sell flowers. So when people are coming home and you're like, here. And throughout my high school days, I was absent a lot more than my parents were aware of. I missed about 90% of all the math classes. But because I got a gig as an actor. So I had a gig as an actor, I had a gig where I was working nights registering bills for people because I wanted to make money so I can go travel. That was like the only thing in my head. And I had this idea that when I was done with high school, I was going to do a round the world trip that was going to last somewhere between 3 weeks and 3 years. And I had it planned down into to detail pretty much. So I had to have that money incoming. And then I kind of went off on that trip. I did some other things, had some interesting relationships. And I started realizing that I don't actually have to travel back to Sweden to make money. And I mean, now it sounds like such an idiotic idea, but I would actually go abroad, travel for months, go back to Sweden in the summer, drive a truck or do, some menial job, which was really well paid in Sweden back in the days. And then I would go travel. And then I realized that, okay, wait, I can be a dive instructor or a skydiving instructor or a climbing instructor, or I can do all these things abroad. So I started getting all kinds of certificates and exploring and traveling even more. And then I was really blessed in the way, again, that, since my parents are doing a lot of traveling themselves, so they can kind of show you the way a little bit. And I decided to invest in a nightclub and a bar in the Philippines. And I remember my dad telling me at the time I had 69,000 Swedish kronas, which is like in today's money, like $7,000 or something. And I took all of that except $30 and I put it into this business. And of course, my dad's looking at me saying, like, are you crazy? This is a super high risk, other side of the world, restaurant business with everything that comes with that. And putting basically 100% of my savings into that. Looking back, that was not a smart choice.
Okay.
But I was very lucky, so it turns out that was a very profitable choice. We did really well for a long time as well. And that period of time for me was a blessing, because I got to, in Sweden, I was average height, average skin color, average hair color, average everything, right? And I was a self-perceived nerd. I like, like I said, I like everything. So I was studying all kinds of things on my own, and playing with computers and doing some coding and these things. I should probably not get into that on camera. But doing some things to learn how cybersecurity works back in the days. And that kind of meant I wasn't the coolest kid in class. And trying to go out or trying to do things, I was just that kind of nerdy, average looking kind of guy in the background. Or at least that's what I thought, And arriving in the Philippines, and on top of that, then having a restaurant, nightclub, I was basically the only European or white guy below 50. Back then, it was mostly, if you're 45, 50, whatever, you start traveling to Thailand because there's no extradition and the prices are low and people are nice. And then if you're even more adventurous, you would make it all the way over to the Philippines. But so that, of course, meant that it was hard for me to disappear. It was easy for me to get attention. And the business partners that I teamed up with at the time had some really good connections in the Philippines. And generally around the world, if you don't have good connections, it's very difficult to run bars and nightclubs. You tend to need protection for that. And when I arrived, the president that we were closely connected to got ousted, got thrown out. So my partners basically said, listen, your job now is to get to know everyone and finding the upcoming power families, and and I worked really hard on that, really hard. Interestingly enough, that job was basically to go out partying, right? So it was hello, welcome. I was 19, 20 years old, and felt I was making more money than I had been doing before, in a country where that money buys you a lot. And becoming like a semi-celebrity kind of persona. So that was life-changing to me. Most of my life I've counted as before or after the Philippines.
Wow.
It was completely, it completely changed me in so many ways. For a while, for the worst, being able to to hang out with people who would tell me that I could do anything in the country except running drugs. That was like the only thing you stay out of. And knowing that meant that you could literally go out and kill someone and I would get away with it, because they did. And but being a mama's boy from Sweden, where like we don't jaywalk, so me feeling that I was like losing myself and turning into an asshole, and my friends warning me at that point, you gotta think about how you're acting. But my Filipino friends would look at me as being this super law-abiding whatever person who might stretch as far as not stopping at a red light, or not following the traffic rules. And that to me was enough, because I once heard myself saying, like, don't you know who I am? And that's about as uncharming as I can imagine a person being. And anyone who turns around and goes like, oh, don't you know who I am? And you're like, yeah, probably a nobody, because you're saying that. So I did have some lessons that I needed to learn on that side. But on the other hand, being suddenly like a popular person, being like VIP into nightclubs, being interviewed on TV, that was a very new experience for me. Very new. And I would come back to Sweden and for a while think I was more in that persona than my old Swedish persona. So with that, I started realizing that I could actually travel to a new place, tweak a little bit my behavior, and see what the reaction would be. So suddenly it was like the world is a laboratory for me. And I had a sense of who I was and who I wanted to be, how I wanted people to see me. And it took me almost 2-3 years of continuously traveling to new places every, I would say, up to 3 months to get a feedback loop going. So basically A/B testing my own behavior and getting the data from that, then structuring the data, analyzing the data. Am I getting the desire that or the outcome that I desire? No, okay, then let's tweak it again, and let's tweak it again, until finally you're at an MVP, or an alpha version of yourself, where you're thinking, oh, we're on the right track. And I was literally thinking this way back then, over analyzing everything, looking at it as a logical math kind of problem. But it worked. And suddenly, I would look in the mirror and I would say, hey, that is me looking back. I was getting fit, I was hitting the gym. Suddenly I looked at myself and I said, you know what, you're not that bad looking. And people are kind of appreciating who you are. So that was a huge step in my life. And something that I would recommend anyone who has the chance, if you can do a gap year, or just take some time off. And I don't really believe in this whole like finding yourself idea, but go out and create yourself. Decide, who do you want to be? Who's my ideal self? That person that a lot of us, when we go to bed, we're thinking, like, oh, tomorrow this is what I want, right? Tomorrow I'm gonna wake up at like 6 o'clock and I'm gonna hit the gym and I'm gonna do this and that. Well, if that is your ideal self, find ways to start moving in that direction. And not only because, to a large extent, because when you actually arrive at a place when you feel comfortable with who you are and what you're doing, it's very powerful. At least it was for me. And for me, it was powerful on so many levels, where I started realizing that maybe women in Sweden might like me as well. Not only the Filipinos, opening my eyes up to being like, oh, right. So all around the world, people are kind of appreciating having me around. And that was also the time when I started to look at the business that we were doing in a different way. So that business is probably the only business that I co-started or co-founded that didn't have this, save the world complex.
Mhm.
Because I have.
Hello, but before we will continue, I just wanna let you know where you can find the best product design and web development services. And it's the company called Humancore. So here in our company you can get the most tremendous and exciting UI UX design services combined with web development skills. Moreover, you can use our excellent calculator staff just to collect your order because again, Unicorn is where unicorns are made. And if you want to get your $1 billion company, you definitely need to have a nice design and development co-founder. And Unicorn focusing on B2B, startups, products, any other technical company, especially in Web3, AI, and fintech fields. So here you can see a bit more about our benefits against agencies, freelancers, hiring processes. So it's always better to have your own in-house team. So don't hesitate. Explore our services in our website, evencore.com. Explore our case studies and let's make something beautiful. So looking forward for you below. Thank you so much for watching this episode and let's move on.
To admit, otherwise, those years were incredibly fun. I had friends coming over. We would explore ourselves, our friendships, the cultures, and we started traveling all over the world. And I'll get into that a little bit later, but I've been super blessed on that side as well. But I was also able to, at that point, in a way, look at my business partners as mentors. And obviously, we all have, things we're good at, things we're bad at. I was very good at sales. I was very good at networking at that age. I was relatively good at, I would normally spend like the entire night in one of the nightclubs or bar nightclubs just to get the whole vibe going and, everyone feeling happy and this is where we want to be. And, so they'll spend even more money. And I was loving it. It was so different from whatever I've been doing before, right? But it also gave me the opportunity to look and see, okay, so one of the guys was meticulous when it comes to the figures. So he would go through the finances in detail. He would know where every little peso, like a 10 cent, where they would be at every time. And I realized, unfortunately, I'm not as detail oriented when it comes to running the figures continuously. I do it, but it's not something that gives me joy. But it's something, of course, you have to do. But I realized with that as well, the power of having a group around you working towards the same goal. And with that company, I really felt that was what we're doing. We were all willing to use sandpaper and work physically in the bars when we're building them to make sure to keep the costs down and under control. There's a lot of, like I said, networking to make sure that whoever we needed to be on our side was on our side. So there's so many things that I learned during that time. And it was also the first time that I spent a very long time in a country. So otherwise I would have traveled maybe for a few weeks or a month to a country. And I think that was the first time that I spent years. And that was even more enlightening to me, because with all of that time, I came to understand the culture quite well. Came to understand, how their finances work, how their business work, the different political power, the family parties, and I had friends who were living on the street, selling themselves, all the way up to the president of the country, which made every day like an adventure. You could always go visit someone, see something new, experience something new, and learn something new. And but during that time, I was mostly doing hospitality. And then after that, it has been a wild ride of sorts. On my personal side, I've been able to travel extensively. I believe I have been to somewhere between 150 and 175 countries, give or take. Most of them I've been spending months or weeks in, and I've had the pleasure of living with tribes in Africa, running around in my loincloth and hunting with my spear and doing rite of passage, running on the backs of bulls and whipping yourself with branches until you bleed, and like all of these cultural aspects, which in a way, it's getting to experience what you see on TV. That's and I used to love nature documentaries and anthropological documentaries as a kid. So to be able to go out and, like I said, I'm in skydiving and all these kind of adventure sports. So I get to go underwater, I get to go up in the air, I get to drive motorcycles in the desert, or I get to I don't know, but like all over the world, like all of these amazing experiences that we can have. For me personally, I think living with tribes is probably the I don't want to say coolest thing, but it's probably the furthest away from my own life. And the different tribes have such different cultures, even if they're living in a relatively small area. For example, in the south of the African Horn, so in Ethiopia, you have Omo Valley. Now there's a big highway running through, and it's changed a lot. But when I had the joy of going there the first time, there were still several villages and tribes that had no contact with the outside world. Meaning we would have to decide: are we gonna risk going to these people, potentially bringing negative effects for them? I wasn't so worried about myself, even though some of them are quite violent. But growing up the way that we have, and all these stories about white people go to America and everyone dying, that's not really the heritage or the what I want to leave behind, right? Here I'm coming to like dig some wells and bring some minor comforts, and everyone dies. That would have been a bit of a setback. But I loved hanging out with them, and hanging out with people, like I said, I literally of every sexuality, every skin color, probably every nationality, background that I've had the joy of meeting. We're all basically the same. We focus so badly on us and them, like my football team against your football team, my city against your city, my country against your country, my whatever against your whatever. It's like we're so desperate to find these things that separate us, and then focus on them and going like, well, your eye color is very scary, and we don't like you. And then you get to know someone. Okay, so but you're a nice person, but everyone else of your group is probably dangerous. And we get so stuck in that. And I've been sitting down with some people. Like I met some Rastafari in Antigua, who it's a tiny island, and they hadn't been to every part of the island. They live in their little hut with their kids, smoke an insane amount of marijuana, and till the land. And I could learn so much from them. Sitting with some of the people of that village, with them telling me about some of the experiences and thoughts and all of this that they had, I learned so much. Same, with the tribes. Same sitting with the sheikhs of GCC, or pretty much every person has an interesting story to tell, if you're willing to listen. Sometimes people feel, hesitant to share because they don't feel that their stories are cool enough or interesting enough or whatever. But at least for a person like me, they're all interesting. Like literally every single person is interesting in one way or the other. And then I have this brain that in a way it sounds like Elon or whoever has a similar thing. Like it's always spinning. And having all these friends, all these experiences, kind of, at least for me, like I travel around and I see so many things that I love and so many things that I would like to change. Some of them are minor, some of them are slightly bigger, as wanting to kind of create a utopia on the planet where we're all working for the same goals and stop this zero-sum game things. And instead of if you look at humanity from a math perspective and a logical perspective, you pretty much end up with religious beliefs. So I don't really like religion, organized religion. I think it's a very good thing to understand that there's something larger than ourselves. And then you get to, in my book, you get to define yourself, what that means. And again, I was blessed because I got to go and see India as a child. I got to go and see, Arab states as a kid, to the point where, and I have a very religious family. But I remember calling my mom. I was sitting with in like one of these longhouses in Indonesia and Bali, sometime in the 90s. And they asked me, "So what's your religion?" But I thought, like, that's an interesting question. Like, and I said, you know what? I kind of have the same as you guys. I believe in the rivers and the trees and the animals and collaboration and balance and all this. And they looked at me and said, "No, but you're from Sweden. You're from Europe. You're either Catholic or Christian." So I had to call my mom and I go, "Hey, according to my heritage, what am I? Like, what am I supposed to say in these situations?" She said, "Okay, you're technically, I guess, a Christian, or some, your family was mostly Christian." And then, of course, further back, we were pagan. And I still feel way more connected to the pagan traditions than I do to the Christian idea of God. Then, because of experiences that I've had myself, sometimes very difficult to explain them, but I feel that I've to some extent had the pleasure of looking behind the curtain. These are always difficult topics to address, sensitive for a lot of people, but I both had the joy of trying some psychonautic experiences, such as ayahuasca and similar things that can be very, very mind-opening. So throwing all of this together is obviously why I became who I am. So family heritage, my family is educated, working class, and like I said, with the passports and supportive family and all of these things, I realized that the only way for me to kind of have a realistic way of making money and living the way that I was basically to become an entrepreneur. And since that kind of happened by itself anyway, I mean, obviously I didn't think about selling, magazines or whatever at Christmas as me being an entrepreneur. And all of these like things that I did as a child. As an adult, I understand that was what I was doing. And I threw myself into some of these projects where, regardless if it was on a personal level or a work level, if I found that something scared me. So I felt like we have basically two extreme emotions. We have love and fear, and I still kind of feel like that way. And I always felt that I need to work against my fears. So if there's something that I do feel unhappy about, like in school, simple things, I didn't like all these needles that they start giving you, you know? So I decided, okay, I'll start donating my blood. And you know, early 90s, the needles were pretty big. So I started giving blood continuously just to get over the feeling of anxiety with that. When I started feeling a little bit of anxiety with heights, I started doing skydiving and climbing and, you know, whatever, right? When I started being afraid of women, I made sure to go out and speak to a lot of women. And that also really, really helped me from a business perspective. There's a lot of scary stuff. And I mean, I speak with at least 5 potential investors every day, every single, and you get no and no and no and no and no. And then suddenly, to your surprise, someone will say yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes because of the big numbers, you're almost taken off guard when people say yes. But if you don't have the balls to ask, it is not going to happen. And that goes for everything in life. And I see now with a lot of people, the opposite has become more of the de facto memorandum, at least in the West, that we feel that pain is something that we must fight to the extent that no one should ever have to feel pain.
Yeah.
And then when we reached that level, we decided, okay, no one should ever have to feel emotional pain. And when we got to that level, numbing ourselves, literally numbing ourselves from everything that might feel uncomfortable. Don't use the N word. Someone might get uncomfortable around that. Don't say that you're a gender. Someone might be uncomfortable around that. So we got into a point now, it is difficult to even have discussions about things, and especially about the bigger topics of life, the ones we ought to really be discussing. We don't. And we've decided that we have to give ourselves a lot of medicines to handle all of these diagnoses that we have. And if something feels bad, I don't want to go to school because someone's mean to me, or it gives me anxiety for whatever reason. As long as you know these keywords, you don't have to do it. And of course, I mean, a lot of us, if we don't have to do something, we don't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a lot of things that I intellectually know I ought to be doing that would make my life better. Again, ideal self, I should be waking up 5 o'clock in the morning. I don't always do that. But if I had the chance as a kid to say, okay, you know what, I feel anxiety today, so I don't feel like going to school ever again. Or, you know, going to the doctor gives me anxiety, or whatever it is. I would have loved that kind of out. I would have taken it every time I could. And I don't know how many times I told my mom, you know, like I'm feeling, you know, my stomach hurts, or I'm coughing, or I have a fever or something. But of course, back then they came in with a thermometer, put it in your mouth or somewhere else, and they said, well, you don't have fever, so let's go. And if we didn't go to school, police would literally come and pick you up and bring you to school in my country.
Yeah.
I saw that happen as a kid. It was just the idea that you can get out of doing what you need to be doing just wasn't there. So we just dealt with it. And I really think we got stronger for it. Obviously, there's a balance with everything, right? But there's a hugely important aspect with feeling that you can overcome, face your fears, and win at something. And this keeps going through your entire life. And if you look at extreme example, let's look at the UFC. A fighter who won his last fight is so much more likely to win his next one. And if you lose a fight, it's on the level where they say if a fighter loses 3 fights in a row, he should probably retire.
Yeah.
And not because he's suddenly a bad fighter, but it gets into your head.
Yeah.
We need to win. We need to see that what we do leads to a positive outcome. And then another one, and another one, and then one that doesn't, and then one that does again. And you're fighting your way towards something. But
Small wins, you definitely need to have them only just to keep yourself on track. That's it.
yes, and for the energy and for believing in yourself and for the momentum. And I myself had a situation a few years back where the one company that I was building that finally in my book was going the right way. So I started a financial institute in Dubai after having worked on regulations for a couple of years with the government. So we created the regulations, applied for the license, got the license, which was a category 4 bank license to do neobanking, crowdfunding, and even some digitization of equities. So real world asset or STOs or whatever you want to call it today. And from the day that we decided, okay, let's do it, it took me 18 months to get to a $50 million valuation. And then I got fired. The whole company kind of imploded because the other people had some other ideas of what they wanted to do with it. And at the same time, my girlfriend had a boyfriend on the side. Forgave her for that, but we got stuck in a difficult loop, and all of that together just made me feel, you know what? I'm so tired of these people. I'm so tired of having to always look over my shoulder, because as great as my childhood kind of was, it didn't really prepare me for the fact that most people who go into business, a lot of them don't have the right intent. And I've definitely learned to stay away from people who say that business is like war. I've noticed that is not a type of person that I like to work with. And zero-sum game really bothers me. That is one of the things that I struggle with the most when it comes to business. And even though I understand it, I keep getting into situations that I probably shouldn't have gotten into, with people I probably shouldn't have been doing business with, because I keep wanting and I keep thinking that, oh, you bring this, I bring this, you bring that, together we're going to get really strong. Now we work towards the same goals. If I win, you win. Instead of stealing each other's pie, let's just bake another one. But then I realized when I'm out doing that, everyone's stealing my pie. And that's been very demoralizing for me. And this is what I also mean with how society, from a logical standpoint, is kind of leads to the way I see society is as a dynamic mathematical system, or math just being a way of explaining it, right? So the old example where if everyone goes to the field during the day, puts in a lot of work, then eventually you harvest that, everyone has some food. But then one or two people would realize that instead of walking all the way to the fields, we can just sit outside of town and then wait for people to come back with their harvest, and then we steal it. And the system will still survive. The other people will start sharing with each other. But eventually some other people would think, hey, why am I putting in all that work? And then these assholes are just stealing everything. I'll just be a thief as well. A lot less work. And then another one, and then another one. And then you get to the point where the people who go to do the work don't even want to do it anymore, because they know they're going to get robbed on the way back. Everyone gets poor. And this goes for pretty much everything. If you're in traffic and you're blocking people, you're not letting them in, and you're like me, that creates wave patterns that slows everyone down, meaning you will get your destination slower.
Yeah.
And this is just so difficult for us humans, apparently, to grasp. But really, if we lived in accordance with basically any of the tenets of religion, everyone would be better off. Everything would work better. And I feel I can say that now because I've been hanging out with so many ultra rich people from around the world. Where I remember in the Philippines, you would be in one of these really expensive health clubs, on a treadmill, and you're running and you're trying to get fit and everything, and you look out and there's shanty towns.
Mm-hmm.
So you look at people starving, and your gym membership is like every time you go to the gym, you can feed a family for a year.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very few people thrive in that type of situation. We don't feel good knowing that we have all of this when they don't have all of this. And it makes us nervous because then we think, well, the people that don't have, they're going to take mine. Like in the example from the fields. So, we bundle up with each other. We create little gangs. Some places it goes as far as being an apartheid system, which we saw in South Africa, or which we see in Israel, Gaza right now, where we become so scared of each other that we start building walls. And then we get really angry with each other for what that creates in our lives. So I don't know if you've been to Gaza, but I guess there's no Gaza anymore. But what used to be there is walls everywhere, guns everywhere, posts and gates everywhere. So if you're going to walk 100 meters, it could take you several hours because you have to make this round tour around, right? The people who lived there, my ex's family who lived there, they would have their 1,000-year-old olive trees burned to the ground and destroyed. And then on the other hand, I have some Israeli friends, and from their perspective, of course, they were finally kind of getting to the point where they could almost forget about the Palestinians. They're behind the wall, and it's all good, right? So it creates all of these feedback loops that are incredibly detrimental to all of us. And but I understand the futility in my wishes. I always want to hold hands and sing Kumbaya and make everything better. But if you get into that mindset, it's also one of the ways that you can look around and say, okay, is there something I can do here that will make things better? And that's entrepreneurship. And I mean, some get into the philanthropic sides. Like my parents and my sister, my family, myself as well, doing orphanages and stipend funds and trying to help other people reach a better life. In our case, very small scale, but that's what we're trying to do. That is just seeing a problem and trying to find a way of solving that problem. If you want to build cars, it's the same thing. Really, whatever it is that you're doing, you just look around and if you can think, is there something I could do now that would make my life better? Then do it. If there's something that would make your neighbors' lives better, even better. If you can look around and say, okay, listen, here's something that a lot of people will think benefits their lives. That's a viable business idea. And then, of course, today what we do, we tend to run around, get letter of intents signed, market research, A/B testing to validate, is this idea that I have something that people are also willing to part with their money for? Because at the end of the day, for good and bad, we live in this type of capitalistic society. And if you don't make money, you don't eat. And if you don't make money, you can't pay your staff. And this is one of the experiences that I had where most things were flowing pretty well in my life. I remember thinking that if 10-year-old Marcus would get to see the kind of women I was dating, the kind of friends I had, the type of experiences and adventures and sports and all of this, I wouldn't have believed it at the 8 to 10. Like there's no way. It didn't exist in my world that you can live in that way and experience these things. But then I got to that point where I ran into the wall. And I really, that what happened at that point is that I had three different things at the same time, two companies, one relationship, where I felt everyone is just stabbing me in the back.
Mhm.
So unfortunately, I went back to my home country, Sweden, and society here tried to support me. But what they did is they said, take these pills, which I refused, and then basically go sit in the corner.
Uh-huh.
And somehow that was going to make me better. They did try with some therapy and such as well, but it was all kind of just coming back to the fact that, listen, Marcus, you have ADHD, you're depressed, whatever these other things. And the way out for you is to not do anything and just sit there. And unfortunately, I got to the point where I felt, okay, my whole worldview that people are good, that people do want to help each other out, that we don't necessarily have to have this us and them and work against each other. All of that kind of fell apart for a while. And so I did what the doctor told me. I basically sat in my chair and stared at the wall, which was also pretty much when COVID hit. So it was even easier for me to kind of isolate myself in doing this. Then after a while, I started thinking, okay, I've been sitting here for a long ass time now. How has this benefited me? I was like, okay, well, I went from having a six-pack to being fat, like properly fat. Took a lot of work, but I managed to get there. All my money was gone. No one really remembered who I was anymore. And everyone kept telling me, well, maybe in the future you can, work in a grocery store or whatever. And every time I heard that, I just got more depressed. And I'm thinking, like, what are you talking about? Like, I've had this amazing life, incredible life. And I'm touring around the world, going to trade shows and giving my keynotes, and people are listening to me. And I feel like I'm having some impact in all these things. Now I'm just going to sit here and be disabled. But when I got out of that, I realized I had allowed myself. I was happy to listen to these people telling me that it's not your fault and it will miraculously somehow change if you don't do anything. And it kind of felt short term, it kind of felt nice. Everyone was showing how they're caring, and society was kind of lending me a hand and all this. So it became kind of like these secondary winnings, right? Like I completely lost track of what was actually important in my life, but I was feeling like I got little wins here and there. And I started chasing those wins, not what I actually wanted, but something else. And then when I again then felt like, okay, let's stop this feeling sorry for ourselves, which was really hard when everyone is telling you to feel sorry for yourself. It's like, and by that time, I had sunken so low, my parents had to take care of me. So suddenly, I remember my dad when I was 23. He was a little bit intoxicated, or quite a lot. And he turns around to me and he says, "Oh my God, you've proven yourself in a way that we cannot imagine. You have companies abroad. You've done all these things." And he says, "You have nothing left to prove to us." And I felt, I grew up in a Nordic society. We didn't talk about our feelings very much. I do remember my dad saying "I love you" once in a while when he was, had a whiskey or two too many. So to hear my dad turn around and be all like, "You're there, you made it," that was huge for me. 20 years later, my dad pays for my rent. My dad is paying for my food.
Yeah, that's really. Yeah. Honestly, I even don't have something to comment here. Crazy story.
That let's just say that didn't rhyme very well with my sense of masculinity. And I come from Sweden, where when I grew up, women kind of paid for themselves, men for themselves, all these like equality ideas, and I still don't feel like a man when I can't pay for myself. I don't want to go on a date with a woman. I don't want to go out and do something because I feel completely emasculated. And then when I try to start rebuilding again, I realize not dealing with the issues that I had, but instead, like we were talking about in general, pretty much numbing myself and agreeing to these things. While I was doing that, the rest of the world moved on. And quite frankly, the rest of the world might care in a way, but they also don't care in a way.
Yeah.
So as good as you can feel to sit there and complain about the world and how, your parents are shit, or, whatever it is that you're feeling, because we all have these like feelings, you don't get paid for that. You don't get loved for it. You might be getting, like we said, all these feelings that kind of feels good for in the short term. Yay, I don't have to go to school. Yay, I don't have to go to work. But you actually want to do it. You should need to remember that you want to do it. And I think that is possibly one of the hardest lessons that I've had. Because it's so easy to just go like, okay, you're right. I'll let you take care of me for a little while, or I'll listen to these ideas. I have another friend who, when he has been going through some hard times, started playing computer games. And obviously that's so obvious, right? Because you're getting all these reward centered stimulated because you kill all the other players, or and you put it online, so it feels like you're actually doing something, and you can say that, oh yeah, I'm gonna become an influencer, or a gamer, or this and that. So you're creating this kind of false narrative for yourself, and then you're just getting all these pleasure center, all these rewards for doing absolutely nothing. And in the meantime, your bank account will shrink, your belief in yourself will shrink, and eventually you have to turn that computer game off, or you have to, I don't know, close the bottle, or whatever your vices are, right? Whatever you get stuck in, at some point, either you need to end it, final solution, or you need to get out of the issues that you put yourself in. And when that happens, you're going to realize that the rest of the world didn't stand still for that year, or those 2 years, or whatever it was that you spent doing nothing. The rest of the world moved on. And now you have to speed up to even try to catch up. And that was the thing for me, because as long as I was on a roll, things came relatively easy for me. It took a lot of balls, a lot of guts. I very often had to tell myself, okay, what would you do now if you had zero fear? Like, with fear, I'll go home to Sweden, I'll do my university. Okay, without fear, I'll go on a safari. Or I'll go, open another project in some far-flung country and see if I can meet some people. So we have to challenge ourselves continuously. Throughout life, you ought to challenge yourself. And especially if you want to be able to do business. And we also have a tendency, I feel today, and me included, we're hoping someone else is going to take the lead, or that our business partners are going to do a lot of the things that feel scary or difficult. And if you're on a really good team, that happens. More often than not, we tend to look at our partners and mirror our own shortcomings and get annoyed with them for things that we're actually annoyed in ourselves about. And that also leads to us humans have a tendency to overestimate our own work and underestimate the work of others.
Yeah.
And you can look at a household. And I used to live with a couple of friends of mine in university, and one of the guys was super pedantic with the kitchen. And he was always pissed off because he felt that he was cleaning and cleaning and cleaning, and no one else was doing anything. And I had to highlight to him, I was like, do you think the bathroom is this clean when 4 men live in an apartment? If no one is cleaning that as much as you're cleaning the kitchen. I said, it's not me, but it's one other guy in the apartment. But the guy who was cleaning the bathroom wasn't as pedantic about the kitchen. So he didn't value that as highly as he did the bathroom. So like super silly little things, living in an apartment where everyone is working their ass off, really contributing, and still managing to get annoyed with each other for not doing their part. And this is something that I've seen in startups a lot. So I haven't really touched on that field. I mean, I do a lot of startups. I do health tech myself. I do fintech myself. I've done pretty much every kind of imagining business. A lot of it around data, AI, machine learning, these kind of things nowadays. But I lost my thought of train there. Yeah, no, it's there's so many things that I wish that I knew when I was starting out, and there's, to be honest, a lot of things I wish I didn't know now. I wish I was a little bit more naive again, because it's also when you grow older and you realize that some things are difficult and time consuming, and you're doing it for the 200th time. And in my case, teaming up with other people and being worried that these people are gonna be the reason that your company falls apart, or that you're gonna have some bad feelings. It can be very demoralizing. So there's beauty to being young and naive. So I'll let those be my last words, I think, for your audience. There's, basically up until you're 20, you just need to make sure you don't get into too much trouble. Don't do anything stupid. Yeah, but most of us do a lot of stupid shit until we're 20. A lot of us do a lot of stupid shit in our 20s. Then you hit the 30s, you need to kind of start considering your action a lot more. And as long as you didn't do anything too stupid when you were young, so you still have a clean sheet, then the 30s is where you can really start building. The 40s, where I'm 47. Now is when I'm starting to have some wisdom about what I've done before. Have all these lessons. You might have some networks. Now you can really start growing things, and then hopefully, in your late 40s, 50s, whatever, you kind of start harvesting from all of that work that you did before. So maybe that should be the last one. Don't do anything really stupid.
Honestly, that may be the best advice of all of this long story life and story. That definitely in your life it sucks usually, but you need always to get back from this and think about that, because if you not made the shit, you are a winner. So you can move on. And honestly, what is my conclusions? It's like the life.
Hello, but before we will continue, I just wanna let you know where you can find the best product design and web development services. And it's the company called Core. So here in our company, you can get the most tremendous and exciting UI UX design services combined with web development skills. Moreover, you can use our excellent calculator staff just to collect your order, because again, Core is where unicorns are made. And if you want to get your $1 billion company, you definitely need to have a nice design and development co-founder. And Core focusing on B2B, startups, products, any other technical company, especially in Web3, AI, and fintech fields. So here you can see a bit more about our benefits against agencies, freelancers, hiring processes. So it's always better to have your own in-house team. So don't hesitate. Explore our services in our website, evencore.com. Explore our case studies and let's make something beautiful. So looking forward for you below. Thank you so much for watching this episode, and let's move on.
Something like roller coaster. So sometimes like you're going up, you're going down, and you still needs to find your butt and just get back to recover. And that's especially with that story when you get back to Sweden, and you just said like it was almost the end, but after that you just like, hey, I have to get back because I was there, so why not? Why not again? And honestly, that's really high inspirational. And the most important, how travels, how people, how lots of these things made your personality. So I guess every person, every event in life makes huge impact on your personality. And honestly, I would say it's amazing that today we just touched that topics because it affects the whole life, not just like personality, relationships, work, etc. No, these events, that actions are strongly connected to your life completely. And I would say that's amazing to share it. I would say your life is something like a movie. This is from this story. Lots of like events, actions.
I barely touched on it, but yes, I've had so many moments in my life where I've been thinking, wow, this is like that movie. I've been hiding from people trying to kill me in the worst slums of Mexico. I've had big drug guys point weapons at me because I came into the apartment. Like I said, I had all these tribal experiences. I've been competing, jumping with motorcycles, swimming with sharks. Yes, like there's so many moments of my life that's just been like a movie. And to wind it up, unfortunately, I have a very important meeting that starts now, so I have to round up. But what I realized when I was younger is that older people have a lot of wisdom.
Yeah.
And so I started listening to elderly people, and started to go around asking elderly people for life lessons. And not very many people said, you know what, I wish I would have worked more. I should have stayed away from my family. I should have hidden somewhere and shut the doors. No, everyone is saying I should have worked less. I should have spent more time with my family, worked more on my relationships, and I should have traveled and experienced more. I haven't heard even one person so far tell me, I wish I would have done less. I wish I would have stayed home watching TV much more than I did. I haven't heard that even once. So if we are to listen to people who have actually lived their lives, and this seems to be going back as far as we can tell in time, it tends to be those things, right? And also, you very rarely, you actually very rarely in life regret things that you do. You regret things you didn't do.
Yeah.
Like me, this week, for example, I have a bunch of really silly things on my schedule. I'm gonna call my teacher that I had in grammar school, because I went online the other day and I saw it's her birthday coming up, and she's 90, almost 90 years old, 88 or something. I haven't spoken to her since then. She had a massive impact on my life. So I want to go to her birthday and just come out there and say, thank you. Thank you for doing this for me. I try to remind myself every day to tell my parents how much I love them and how much I admire them and how much I'm so thankful for everything that they've done in my life. My grandparents, I only have one left now, but they were alive for quite some time. But also to remember those like teeny tiny little moments in every day. I used to be great at this. I'm not as good at it anymore. But I used to stop every day when there's a little flower on the sidewalk and just look at that one, imprint it on my brain, and then at night, I would ask myself, so what were the beautiful moments of the day? And I knew that I would at least have that flower, that sunset. That's something, right? So that's also something I think we should really look to the people around us, the lessons that are everywhere. And I obviously really wish that we're gonna be more of a kumbaya society moving forward. I'm doing what I can for that, to make sure that people have sovereignty, because we're kind of moving into a phase of humanity where we have become the product. And because of that, we now have so much data on all people that we can manipulate, nudge your behaviors in a massive way, and know what you're doing. And one of the most important companies I'm building at the moment is a health tech company, utilizing wearable technology and creating a digital twin of yourself, and then connecting basically all the health data into that, gene editing, gene testing, blood testing, whatever you do.
Yeah.
I'm not the only one building that kind of system. But imagine that you have that system with a large enough population connected to it, and having the possibility of dividing people into groups on a level that we'd never had before. So, if you want to design something for, I don't know, 20-something Ukrainian men, you look at the biomarkers of that group, and we can most likely, basically create a bioweapon that will only affect those people. And there's so many ways that are more subtle, but that will affect us a lot in the future. And the only way we can really get around this is owning our own data, controlling our own data, which should obviously be ours. So in our project, for example, we were completely different from most others. We keep zero knowledge proof wallets for your health data, meaning you have access to it, I don't have access to it. And you can do a bunch of things without me even knowing that you are you. So do anonymous in a much stronger way than current systems. And this is something that, if you're an entrepreneur or a budding entrepreneur, please help me with this one. Make sure that we have our own data, that the data that we have is not even shared with other companies. You don't want to share your data. You want to share, for example, we should be able to have a layer between your wallet and a company, that the company comes in and says, okay, I need the following information so I can categorize this person. But instead of then giving all the data, the company gives the algorithm to the mid layer. The mid layer then uses that algorithm with the data that it can see, read, but not copy, and then go back and say, well, according to your way of your algorithm, your way of judging this person, he is, I don't know, a category 4. So give him that prize. They don't need to know where you live and all this data. And what we see as well is that anyone who has a depository of a lot of valuable data is a target. Most of the data that gets spread around today, that's not you losing your data. That's a company not having a good cybersecurity system. They're losing your data. So you have some companies, like one that's very similar to us. They also have a smart ring, and they moved it a slightly different direction than us. So they have Palantir as their main client now, and the War Department and CIA-backed money to pay for the product. Where do you think your data is going? I mean, Palantir is the whole reason Palantir exists is to aggregate all of your data from every known channel, and then using that data in whatever mean that they feel is great. getting your money, destroying your whatever, right? So if you're an entrepreneur out there and you're looking for a business idea, something to do, secure our data, secure our sovereignty. Let us be free humans moving forward as well, because we're not today, we're no longer free, but we could be. So please do that.
Honestly, Marcus, I would say, let's, like, I would like to invite you for the second part of this, where we can talk specifically about this business related stuff with the data and etc. But, like, just to keep that episodes equal between each other, and in that case, not to split a lot of the attention, I would say that episode was really great because we've collected lots of insight how like to make a good life, how to make good principles, how to set priorities right. And I want to thank you so much for being here, for sharing that knowledge. I would definitely, I'm completely agree that a lot of people will hit lots of comments with the thoughts, ideas, and visions which they collected from this call. So I want to thank you so much for this. And I would say we definitely need to record another part specifically with this topic related to the data, business, and etc. Because it's as well lots of stuff to discuss which can be valuable. And for now, I just want to thank you. Thank you for this amazing
Thank you.
for being here.
And I'll happily come back soon.